Hi, I'm Bart Hanson, the owner and operator of CrushLivePoker.com. The following hand comes from our call-in show that we record at 4:45 p.m. Pacific Time every Monday. If you want to call in your hand, check out the phone number in the description. Okay, so 2-5 Rivers, what's the structure?
It's a $1,000 max buy-in and
Okay.
2-5, and me and the opponent are pretty deep. I would say 1,500 effective.
Okay.
There's another guy in the hand, but he folds out, but he was shorter stacked, so mainly
Okay.
it's just me and the other guy, 1,500.
Okay.
So it folds to the middle position guy who limps for 5,
Okay.
and one of probably the player I respect more than most players is a 2-5, real solid player, very high poker IQ. He raises to 25 on the button.
Okay.
Small blind folds, and I'm sitting in the big blind with 8-9 offsuit. And I think I probably chose the worst of the three choices. I kind of feel, after reviewing the hand, I think 3-betting or folding was probably the right choice. I elected to call. I didn't like my call because I wasn't completing the action.
Yeah.
And I also know that, the button is opening wide in this spot often, trying to isolate the limper. So I kind of felt like calling kind of put me in a spot that is the reason why I'm calling, because it got me in some trouble later on.
Also, too, you're not really getting great pot odds, right? Like, he's making it 5x. I mean, it's one thing if a straight button opens to, like, say, 15, and the pot's like 20, 10 for you to call, but he's making it 25. Yeah, there's one dead limp, but like you said, you have to worry about the guy behind you. I mean, so it's like 30 or 35,
Yeah, I'm
20 for
almost
you to
getting it.
call.
So
Yeah, I wouldn't
not
call
even getting
here.
2-1 here.
I wouldn't
So
call, no.
calling, yeah, I agree. And so the flop came 6-7-2,
So did the limper
all
call?
spades.
By the way, did the limper
Oh,
call?
so he folds.
Okay.
Limper folds,
So your head's
and
up. Plus, you said the guy's really good, too, right? You respect him, so you're out of position.
yeah, he's one of
Yeah.
definitely the top players.
Yeah.
And so the flop comes 6-7-2, monotone, all spades,
Six,
and I
seven,
do
two.
have the 9 of spades. But this is where it gets tricky, because I obviously have an open-ended straight draw, and I do have the flush draw. But I also realize I could have, I could be drawing dead.
Sure.
Obviously, there's negative implied odds.
Uh-huh.
And even if I do hit the straight on the turn, my hand arguably could just be no better than a bluff catcher. So I don't know if continuing was the right move, but I check, and he leaves out and bets about $50, which was about the pot after the rake. So, and I called, which
Well, I mean, this
which
is going to
felt
be some
at this
really
point.
advanced work. I'll make an advanced comment.
Yep.
As I've been doing like a lot of our work over on Top Section with our buddy Conlon Mon. By the way, Conlon and I are actually going to be almost 99% going to be commentating the big 25, 50, 100, 200 game a week from Friday on Live at the Bike. Him and I for 5 hours. That's one of the YouTube streams that gets like the most live viewers out of anything on a Friday, not just poker, and it crushes every other poker stream by far, Live at the
Wow.
Bike. But what I would say is that this sizing, even though you respect the guy, this can never be the right sizing on this board. In terms of like, there's something off with this sizing. Betting pot here, button versus big blind on a monotone board here, it's just not. Now maybe he's making an exploit, but it's really, really suspect. What I would say is it's probably, God, it's probably very difficult for you to fold here given your equity, and like maybe he's doing this with like a red overpair or something like that. But meaning that you've got like a bunch of equity, right? Now, obviously, you can have very little equity too if he's got a high spade. But what I would say is that if he had used more normal sizing, say he had bet, 20 or 25 into 50, and you had this particular hand, you actually could take this hand as one of the hands that you might check raise to sort of clean up some of the overcards and spades that might be out there. Now, the thing that would be tricky would be that you have to sort of figure out whether or not you're going to continue on the turn. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't always have to continue on the turn if you check raise flop. like a lot of people think, oh, I've got to continue. No, you should have different hands and different lines in your sort of set of thinking where you're going to have check raise continues, you're going to have check raises and then checks if the guy calls. Now, against this sizing, I don't think you're supposed to really check raise a whole lot, and probably not 8-9 with the 9 of spades. Could you call? Yeah, I think you probably need to call here, given that you could have a massive amount of equity, but I think check raising would probably be not the right play here against this sizing.
Yeah, and that's exactly what went through my mind was his large bet kind of took away for me to kind of check raise him. And at that point, we're probably going to be getting stacks in at some point if the hand escalates at that point. And like I said, I could be drawing dead.
Well, you're not going to get stacks in. I mean, if you were to check raise 8-9 and he came back over the top.
At a later street.
Oh.
I mean, at a later street, like if my card comes in on a turn or.
But what card though? You mean like a 10 or a 5 that's offsuit? I mean, you're not going to go buck wild on a spade, right?
No. That's what came was the turn came. And,
so you called. So did you call? You called, right?
Yeah. So I call, and the 10 of hearts comes in. So it's like the one card that could get me in trouble fills in.
Okay.
And so here I took the line of checking, hoping he would slow down. And do you want me to tell you now what he does?
Sure.
Yeah. So then he leads out and bets pot again, 150.
So button bets 150 now, right?
Yep.
On the 10 of hearts. Boy, this doesn't really seem like sizing that's all that indicative of a flopped flush. I mean,
I felt like it was a hand where, like in the beginning, I thought maybe he was trying to protect an overpair.
Right.
But when I called, then I thought, okay, this sounds like he probably has maybe a hand like, an offsuit ace, where he has the nut flush draw, and I think that hand would play exactly like this. So what's your thoughts there as a possible holding here?
I don't know how often he needs to bet the nut flush draw on the flop heads up against you. And I don't know, what hands are going pot with just the nut flush draw as the ace of spades. The other interesting thing, though, too, is that this isn't really all that indicative of a hand like flopping the nut flush when somebody uses this sizing, either slow play it or dinky it. And then, I mean, I guess he could have some suited broadways, but the whole hand is really weird with this sizing. And I feel like if you check raise, though, your hand looks so strong against this sizing. This is really weird.
I wouldn't make the check raise if I had the nuts. And I agree. This is what made this hand. And that's why I called in, because this hand had aggravated me for a couple of weeks, because the bet sizing totally made it difficult for me to really kind of hone in on to what I thought he was doing.
I would probably call, and if you think he's running like some sort of bluff or something like that, then you'd probably check call off on spades. I was trying to think if you're up against a weak player, you could do like that play that I like to call, which is sort of I call it an upfront bet, where you call turn here. I've never really given this particular example, but what you end up doing is you call turn and you lead on a blank, and you can't really get raised. It's sort of weird because you could actually make that play though too. Like you could check call and then lead river.
I should have done that actually.
If you think he has an overpair and will call and thinks that you miss, but even that looks sort of strong. The whole hand is really weird because of the sizing. I've got no problem with calling, so you call, huh?
Yeah, and I'm glad you feel the same way, that this is like a tricky spot. So, and studying all the studying I do, and from your site, like I've gotten better at reviewing my own hands afterwards. And this is one I still keep going back to, and that's why I eventually called.
Yeah.
So the river comes an ace of diamonds.
Ace of diamonds. Now the thing about that is that's very interesting, where it actually might. Well, it's probably interesting on both spots, because I was going to say is now, if you thought that he was doing this with like the ace of spades, he doesn't need to bet.
Exactly.
But at the same time, but the problem though now is at the same time, if you have the ace of spades, you're not going to bet either. So if you came out and bet here and I was in your opponent's spot, I would be like, this guy probably is like sandbagging something. Like you'd be so polar here, right? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So the pot is what, like 450, something like that, and you guys have maybe
the pot
750
was like 350. on the river. The pot was 350.
Is it? Because I thought he bet 50 on the flop and 150 on the turn, so that's 400, and then you've got 450 for by my calculation, right?
Let's see. 50 pre-flop, 150 on the. Yeah, yep, 450, right?
Okay, yeah. So yeah, it's sort of a weird river. If you think he's good and he might value bet some stuff too here because he's a thin value better, then I would probably.
And he does.
Yeah, I'd probably check call then, I guess. But again, yeah, you're right. The whole hand's very, very strange. And what I will say, because I like this hand, we'll probably do it as a YouTube hand, is that there certainly are some people that I would check raise the turn. Because there are people that I would play against at 5-5 where I know that their sizing is never indicative of a flush on flop and on turn, and I might just click it up to like 350. Do you know what I mean? Even though it looks strong, because you basically have the nut hand that's not a flush on the turn, right? I mean, you have the nuts that's not a flush.
And by check raising on that turn, you also obviously you have a little chance of some fold equity on the turn, but you also might get a free river. He might check the river. He's afraid you might check raise him again. Therefore,
if you check raise the turn small and he called and the river was a brick, of course you would bet the river again. You're out of position, right? Like if you went 350 on turn and the river was like an offsuit deuce. Well. Yeah, of course.
Right, of course, yeah. So let me just say this. So this is where it got tricky again, because the whole time I thought he would also play this, like I said earlier, with the ace high flush draw.
Yeah.
So when the ace comes in, I feel like, all right, his hand does have some, showdown value. So maybe he would actually check behind had he actually filled in with the ace.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's what we said in the beginning. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing though for you though. Remember too, it's the same thing if he has. It's the same thing if he has something there, and you now come and bet because you probably wouldn't just lead out with the ace. So you just keep that in mind. So what ended up happening?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happened. I was so thinking about, because he's a good player, but just totally thinking about what he's holding. I really wasn't, given my, what perception of me did he have, and what was my range to him.
Yeah.
So he ended up having a jack 5 flush.
So wait a minute. So what happened? You checked the river?
So I checked the river. He bets 350.
Okay, we did skip away. We skipped that river action, right?
Yeah,
I wasn't just in Neverland. Okay, so hero checks, and the button then what bets 350?
He bets 350, and that's what really throws me off here. I'm like,
you have to call. You have to call.
I called, and I just felt like when I reviewed the hand, he flipped over, so he flopped the flush. I just was kind of surprised he would get 3 streets of value that big with a jack high flush. So that's what kind of shocked me at the end.
I mean, it's sort of interesting too, his sizing on the river, because like an ace comes and it's sort of bad for your range. But I mean, he took it for 3 streets. I mean, I don't think that he did anything wrong. I obviously don't think that you did anything wrong against this caliber of player, except the fact that you should fold pre-flop, right?
Right, exactly.
But yeah, it's an interesting one.
So you agree too that folding pre-flop just ultimately was the right choice?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But again, I feel
thanks for the call, bud. Hey guys, if you like what you've seen here, please click on the subscribe button and you'll get notified every time we put up a new video. And if you want to check out crushlivepoker.com for the first month free, use the code YTA100. Click on the link right there.